Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. It's a very special Dear Andy, Dear Ari, Dear Nicole edition. Nicole is back. It's like Fridays during the fall, except it's the Friday before Selection Sunday. Nicole, you just recorded a basketball power hour with Chantel Jennings, and you got another basketball power hour next week in honor of the tourney.
Yes. We'll hopefully have some tips and strategies and upset picks, Final Four contenders. Might need to just have Ari send in a voice memo of who he's betting, just so we know. I would like to have that on the record on Power.
I want to know why too. I want the reasoning behind it.
Does Ari?
It's not.
Ari,
it's
do
not
you have
exciting.
reason?
Yeah, I tail people who are good at it. It's not my thought process. I couldn't name 10 players in college basketball.
Boring. See, that is a boring answer.
Well, I want to try to win money. I mean, if I did it on my own, I'd be dead. I wouldn't. I wouldn't know where to begin. Like, for instance, Rutgers is beating Michigan right now. Who saw that coming?
Well,
anybody who watched the Big Ten?
Yeah, the entire non-Purdue portion of the Big Ten has been wildly unpredictable and basically the same.
Yeah. Rutgers is out to a 9-1 run in the second half. I think this is the time to.
Who is Rutgers' coach, Ari?
I couldn't. I don't know. How am I supposed to? I don't know Michigan's coach.
Steve Peichel.
You know Michigan's
Juwan Howard.
I know. I'm kidding.
But yeah, Steve Peichel, he's awesome. He's doing a great job at Rutgers.
I know two head coaches or three head. I know Bill Self at Kansas, and I don't want to undercut our.
Yeah, he's
got an illness
on Thursday.
I know one less because Jim Boeheim's no longer the head coach there at Syracuse, and I know Coach Cal obviously. I don't even know Arizona's head coach. And Sean Miller's not the coach anymore.
Tommy Lloyd.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
He's very good, by the way.
Very good.
Arizona's back, baby.
But I love watching it when I got some juice on the side, but it's not like I'm the one creating the juice. I'm not stepping on the oranges. I'm drinking it out of the carton.
Okay, we'll have actual experts on Power Hour next week to help.
Andy, I know you're going on vacation, but are we going to have our grab ass March Madness?
No. I'm going to be on a boat. I'm going to be in international waters.
That's one of my favorite shows of the year. I'm sad.
I know. We could probably record it now. Like,
yeah,
I can basically guess what the field's going to be with maybe a few non-bid thieves. We don't have matchups. So
it'd be funny if we recorded it before you left using the final bracketology and just ran that.
How many people who really listen to the show would know? That's the question.
That's the bit, though. It's not like you're gaining any information from us anyway. So who cares if it's the real bracket?
True. That is true. All right. Nicole, I am so impressed with what you're doing right now because for those who read Nicole regularly, you know she is the person, if someone goes viral during a college sports event, she tracks their ass down and tells their life story. You are now pre-writing these. You got a story on David Shriver from VCU, and when VCU makes the tourney and David Shriver inevitably goes off for like 26 in a first round game, the story's already there.
So he is long hair, straggly hair. It's a mustache, just chucks up threes, makes a lot of them. He's over double digits in their opening game as that's unfolding while we're recording right now. Let me just read you this quote. You will fall in love with him. This is from his former Hartford coach because he went D2 to Hartford to VCU. I knew he'd have a fan club because of what he brings to the table is so unique. He's 6'7", 225 pounds. He's this cheerful, incredibly charismatic mountain man who just drains threes from anywhere on the floor. Who's not going to love that? So yes, we need VCU to make the tournament. The weird part about this is the A10 is not nearly as strong as it is. And usually probably need to win, get the auto bid, but you are going to love him. David Shriver's our guy. We love him. We love his story from a really small town in West Virginia, started at the D2 school in his hometown. And yes, it's just very fun to watch this guy drain threes from all over the court.
I think this would be an interesting piece of content for the show, Andy, because I'm very curious. Like Nicole, when somebody comes on television and falls through the hedges or is reading a book or whatever, those stories that you do, I've always wondered, like, when it's just a random person in a big stadium, like, what is step one to finding that person?
Okay, so I'm going to give the example.
Do the LSU one.
Well, LSU
Which she
one.
stared at the camera.
Yeah, the LSU stare at the camera girl.
So she was pretty active on social media. I want to tell you guys the story of the Kansas crocheter. She was not active on social media. That one's the hardest one. So basically, for like LSU, I'm going to each of the major accounts posts about it, right? If they're making a joke or they're sharing the video, I'm looking at all the replies, I'm looking at all the quote tweets, because someone is going to tag the person, right? And they're going to be like, oh my God, it's you, right? So it could take days. Well, it could take hours, but you're sifting through all of the main channels that have posted these things. So for the Kansas crocheting girl, now she was like the only person at this section that she was in. It was I think it was a Kansas Oklahoma game in a weather delay. And she's just crocheting. Now, unsurprisingly, she was not very active on social media. So I was looking at people who were making Kansas football jokes. So a few years ago, well before the turnaround, and people weren't tagging anyone. They were just making jokes. And I'm sifting. And eventually find someone replying and saying, oh, I know that girl. She lived in my dorm, on my floor of my dorm. And she knits things for homeless people. She's really nice.
Oh, that's so sweet.
No name, nothing. Yeah. So, also part of the search that helped was I have knit things in the past. Like I can knit, and I've knit scarves. And
you're a knitter.
I'm a knitter. And I knew that she wasn't knitting. She was crocheting because she only had the one needle. So I was also searching the correct terminology. So anyway, once I see that tidbit, the only lead was that this person had lived in her floor. I tweeted at that person. They never responded. But I start Googling student-run organizations about knitting things for homeless people and found an organization that was like on the KU website, started by a student. So I cold email the email associated, and it's her. And then she agrees to chat.
That's really good. That's good reporting.
That is amazing. Yeah. The feeling, and we've all had this, the feeling you get when you send something out kind of blind, like to a random email address or a phone number that you've been told may or may not work, and it turns out to be the person you're actually looking for.
Andy, it's the Bishop Sycamore guy.
Oh my God, yes.
I don't remember who found his number, but I just called him and he's like, hello? I was like, what?
You answered? Why?
Yeah, that the head coach's name is escaping me, but
Roy.
Roy. Yeah. Good old Roy. But yeah, I always because the thing that I think is awesome, Nicole, is that I'm the type of person, not to sound negative, but it's like if somebody falls in the hedges or gets I don't care about their life story. I would think I didn't care, but the way you do it,
a lot of people do, which is the funniest
I know, but I'm saying the way that
you
do it makes it funny and interesting. So it is hilarious of we've seen the Instagram account of people in the New York subway or people of New York. It's random people in random college football stadiums too is a really funny.
So the first story of that kind that I ever did was there was an NC State basketball win, and they stormed the court, and then someone in a wheelchair stormed the court as part of the court storm, and that part went viral. And so I talked to the kid in the wheelchair. And people loved the story. They just were so interested in everything that led that person to do that and how it physically worked in a court storm.
And no matter what they do with the college football rules, playoff, whatever, that type of stuff is always going to be there.
Well, and those people endure. Like you mentioned NC State. As soon as someone mentions NC State to me, the first image that pops into my mind is not Phillip Rivers or Mario Williams or anybody. It is when they beat Florida State in 2012, that dude, big, tubby blonde-haired dude, shirtless, on a pole, following the commands of Petey Pablo and spinning his shirt around his head like a helicopter.
There are so many of those. I mean, because you just said the LSU Death Stare girl. I've talked to the crying Piccolo, the Villanova Piccolo girl. Oh. Very excited for her, by the way. So she obviously was crying when she went viral. She went to the Final Four with Villanova the next year when they won it all. So there was a happy ending to that story. But yeah, I mean, these are all iconic moments. And one of the smallest world of all of these is one of the gifts that's always gets circulated, and especially now that Northwestern is like playing well and they're going to be in the tournament, is the crying Northwestern kid, who is actually ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips' son. And he's like an adult now. He's actually done like NIL deals to raise money to help other people off of that GIF, which is awesome.
That's hilarious.
Awesome. Yeah.
So what you need to do is bring all these people together. Do you remember the Weezer video in the early part of YouTube? Probably like 2007. YouTube's like 2-3 years old. And they brought together everyone who had gone viral on YouTube. Like they had the Leave Britney Alone guy, and they had some of the other people that just went supernova on YouTube. You got to bring those people. Like you need Des there to meet Crochet Girl. Jim Phillips' son can kind of be the MC of the whole thing. You got to do this.
I should. I also like follow all of them on social media still, and sometimes check in with them.
Of course. See, and that's what a good reporter does. Just because the story's over doesn't mean the relationship ends. Because you never know.
Even when they're once in a lifetime viral moments, you never know.
Exactly. All right, guys, we are going to answer some viewer / listener / reader questions today. I've picked out a few. One, I have a feeling we're going to go a lot of different directions with this. So I even cut clips just in case we veer into another conference. But our first question comes from Ryan. He says, which is more important to the Big 12 and fans, making it to the college football playoff or having the third best conference in college athletics in 10 years? If the Big 12 adds schools, the four corners, amongst others, it would cripple the Pac-12 and likely leave the Big 12 as the third major conference down the road. And this person says, I believe the SEC will eventually take the top layer of the ACC. But in the meantime, adding more schools hurts each current school's opportunity to win the conference in football and secure the almost auto bid. Which is better? We can't have it both ways. It's an interesting thought. I'd not heard anybody ask it that way before.
I mean, I guess the entire point is to compete at a high level and root for something. But I feel like having stability in a recognizable conference should take priority during times of uncertainty, right?
Yes, I think so, especially given that, was it 2021, SEC Media Day, so July 2021, when we found out Texas and Oklahoma were leaving the Big 12, they were thinking pure survival at that point. Now it feels like they're in a much more advantageous situation. But interestingly enough, and I did look into this a few weeks or toward the end of the season, because I was curious when the playoff expanded how things were going to look. And yes, the Big 12 champ's going to get in every year with one of those automatic bids. But I would argue the Big 12's runner-up is going to get in most years too. I think there would have only been 1 year where the Big 12 didn't get at least two teams into a 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I think the bigger issue when you crunch all those numbers is usually the ACC, because it was Clemson and then a huge gap in most of those years. If you look over like the last 9 years, I think the answer is probably stability, right? Because what everyone is doing right now is trying to secure their present and their future. Like they're trying to figure out, where can I be best positioned to continue to have money flowing in that I can compete at the highest level possible. And like, that's part of the reason when we think about like the idea of a Power 2, year over year, the money that the Big 10 and the SEC schools are going to be bringing in is going to pile upon itself. Like a $30 million gap or whatever it is going to be then 60 the next year. Like you're going to see it in salaries, maybe assistant coach movement, a lot of other areas when they continue to stratify. But if you are trying to figure out, like, in terms of your survival or what this could look like, and you think that there is going to be a third league, you want to be it. You want to be the one driving the decision making. Like part of realignment and all of this, and I think it even spills over into the ACC unequal revenue conversation, is like everyone is worried about themselves more than they are their conference, more than they are college sports at large these days. And I understand why. But it also creates a dynamic where, like, you don't want to be the last one on a sinking ship, which is why some people make jumps and move conferences, and always have, even if it, if you think in 10 years, you might look back and be like, oh, it's kind of that was a strange move. You want to be in a league that's an aggressor, not reacting to others. And you also want to be valued, right? And so like all of this is coming into play, where you even have ACC schools being like, hey, we deserve more. But everyone's members of a league for a reason, but people are kind of not prioritizing being a member in these conferences because they're worried that that may not position them the best for the future.
So I think you bring in the most firepower you can, the most market value, the best teams also. Like, good football teams help. I keep talking about, the Sun Belt and how they expanded versus how other leagues in the Group of Five have expanded. I thought the Sun Belt did a marvelous job because all they did was look for people who cared about football a lot. They weren't worried about market size. They just said, have you historically run a decent football program? Do you have a bunch of fans who care about you? And that's who they took. And I think that's what you would, and that's what the Big 12 schools are, by the way, the ones that were left behind by Texas and Oklahoma. Like, Oklahoma State fans, Iowa State fans, Kansas State fans, Texas Tech fans, Baylor fans, Baylor fans, but they care deeply about their teams. They're not the biggest fan bases in the world, but they care a lot. And most of those have, at least in the last 20 years, at some point, and some of them very consistently, have put out good football programs. So,
but wait, I do have a question though about the flip side of that question that we were asked. That you were asked, that we're not all asked. Like, it does matter. It is going to matter if you are a regular CFP participant, right? Like,
yes.
Part of what, if the Pac-12 is able to stabilize, get a media deal, maybe even add a school or two, but like Oregon would have a direct path every single year. Like, that will matter, that they are participating in that they are, earning income related to the expanded CFP. Like, that piece, we just don't know exactly how the dynamic is going to play out because we haven't seen it, and we know what it's like to make it in a 4-team playoff. But like, there is going to be quite a bit of value in whoever becomes like, the cream of the crop in whatever conference.
But here's the thing, and this is ties into what we were talking about with the basketball tournament. Is the Pac-12 a one-bid league? Is the new Big 12 a one-bid league? I would argue the new Big 12 is not a one-bid league most years. The new Pac-12 might be a one-bid league. And
I mean, I think the most important thing, though, is just making sure that your conference has a bid. Like, I would, whether it's one or two, I think is a secondary issue. You want to play in a conference that's as deep and talented as possible.
Well, I think two makes a big difference, and two and possibly three makes a huge difference.
But you want to put yourself in a position where, as college football is changing and the uncertainty of it is continually developing, that you're situated in the best possible scenarios. Like when I read this question, I think about short term. I don't think about long term.
Yeah, like
short term gratification of being in the 12-team playoff at the expense of adding better teams to your conference, I think is a short-sighted viewpoint. Like, you want to do it as you want to put yourself in a position so that you're in a league that matters in 20 years.
Well, and the thing is, and Nicole, you and I talked about this with our ACC story a few weeks ago. Short term is probably the only way to view it, because I think we can feel relatively certain something's going to change in the early 2030s when the Big Ten has another deal, the SEC deal is up, and then the ACC deal is up.
Right. And I think one of the presumptions in the question was that the SEC would gobble up the ACC schools, the best, the most valuable ones. I think the ACC is the league that has schools that the Big Ten and the SEC would want. Like, that creates a little bit of a feeding frenzy, and like that would be an impetus for moves and additions, but they're not available right now. And that's where you talk about this unequal revenue sharing conversation. It's like, well, if you're locked into this long-term deal at a certain price point, ESPN's not just going to give you more money for no reason when they negotiated a deal at a certain point. And also, you're locked in for a long time, which it's like, it's the catch-22, but also positive of a long-term deal is that these schools haven't been able to leave. It's been 2 years, and Clemson and Florida State are still in the ACC. North Carolina and Virginia are still in the ACC. So it's like, it's just such an interesting dynamic. And you're also, to Ari's point about access, it makes me think back to, in that immediate aftermath of Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, people weren't sure the Big 12 would stay a power conference, right, and that they would still have access to different things like their peers do. guaranteeing access to all of the FBS leagues, like the way that they did it with top 6, and it's not even a designated group of 5 spot, that in a lot of people's minds helps stabilize the landscape because everyone does have that access. And if you are the Pac-12 or the Big 12 and you've had members rated and you're trying to figure out your footing, like you still do have a path to make it every single year and to have access to that thing. So it's just funny how quickly that's flipped, because we had the same kind of conversation, same tone about the Big 12 that people now use for the Pac-12.
Well, here's the thing too. Like, is there anything that could possibly happen? Can a conference do anything to stop the train from getting to the destination of 2 super conferences? Like, can anything be done to stop it?
No, I mean, 2 super conferences starts in 2024. Like, that's already happened.
No, I'm saying, but like 2 major conferences that gobble up the leftovers and like are at risk of the scenario that you and Dave and I were talking about.
The Big 10 and the SEC can stop that if they decide it's not worth the money to them. That's who can stop it. And that's a possibility.
And if that happens, then you have more of a semblance of normalcy in the way that we view it now. But the thing that is scary to me, and I haven't been able to sleep since Dave brought it up, was a Big 10 SEC exclusive deal where they only play each other and within themselves and then have their own playoff. And then teams like, TCU or Baylor, who are in this discussion, are no longer competing with the 2 super conferences. So I think
don't necessarily think you can do that without cutting off the bottom and reorganizing. Like, you wouldn't, if you're going to do an AFC NFC thing, where, because the SEC and the Big 10 would have to be essentially one organization at that point. And so if you're going to do that, everybody asks, when do you cut off the bottom schools of those? You would reevaluate who belongs at that point. And that's where having good football would give you a chance to get in there, and having bad football would get you at risk of being kicked out.
Here's another factor that could affect these things. I mean, because when people were wondering, is Big 10 going to go bigger or the SEC go bigger? At some point, someone always says, is there going to be a size that would then attract some legal scrutiny of
There's that
collusion and antitrust issues? So it is possible that those types of concerns, which like the NCAA is already under that scrutiny right now. We have a number of lawsuits looking at this stuff, that could be a deterrent too, because that's part of what they're trying to guard against, that these 2 leagues could merge. Although let's just say, like, they let Ticketmaster, they let some of these airlines merge and do all this other stuff. But like, that's the thinking that maybe that could be a deterrent.
I did want to play this clip for you guys because this came out last week. The David Sampson show is the sports business show on the Dan Le Batard show feed. And they had John Skipper on. John Skipper is the former president of ESPN. He runs the company that owns Le Batard's feed now. And he said something interesting about the ACC and the Pac-12 that I had kind of dismissed this idea, but I'm an idiot. I didn't run ESPN. He did. So when he says it, I want to hear about it.
And what's going on with the Pac-12 right now, who are basically on an island right now looking for someone to give them a decent media rights deal. And it appears as though right now the front runner is Apple, but we don't know what the status of that is. They're very secretive about the way that they negotiate. Fox and ESPN and the linear channels are not really interested in being big-time investors in the Pac-12. And John Skipper, you might have a solution to both of these problems.
I might, and I'm not certain that ESPN is not interested in being in the Pac-12 business. I know it's been reported, but I'm not certain that's true. I think that the ACC should expand or should merge with the Pac-12, which now has 10 teams. I would take 8 of those teams, change my footprint, have a 24-team conference with a Western division, and their ACC network footprint would expand to the West Coast. You could probably force a renegotiation with ESPN for a new deal, and you could solve both problems. The ACC would get more money, expand its footprint, could compete with the SEC and the Big Ten.
Wow. Interesting. I also agree with him when he says it doesn't sound like ESPN's out of it for the Pac-12. I do think they're very much in it because they got to have something at 10:30 Eastern time, one way or the other. But I always thought that was just too unwieldy to do something like that. But what he's saying is because the ACC network has these distribution agreements, you would then get into California, Arizona, Washington, Oregon, and cable subscribers or people who have Sling or YouTube TV in those markets would then have to pay $1.20 a month versus 40 cents a month. That's real money that still matters at this point. Now, it may change as time goes on, but I still don't see how you would manage something like that. A giant 20, it would be 25 teams in other sports with Notre Dame. But I just thought the guy running ESPN says that, or the guy who used to run ESPN says that you have to at least think about it a little bit.
But isn't this a conversation that already happened? Like that we already did?
It did happen, but and it's probably that was probably their first thought too. The people actually running ESPN probably said, "Well, let's talk about this," and then they probably came to some of the same conclusions that we just came to. Like, how would you manage this? What would you do? And also, does it make more money than the current ACC deal? Because you're going to make more off the ACC network, but then you're going to have to pay that to the people you just added. So it doesn't give Clemson and Florida State more. It allows you to pay for Oregon and Washington.
I mean, I think that like these things are interesting and compelling, and it's like a stronger version of the alliance, which didn't have these pieces, right? And it was just the handshake
it wouldn't
agreement.
just be looking each other in the eyes.
I mean, you're looking for actual new revenue streams and visibility and all of these actual tangible things. I just don't know. I'm with you where I just feel like that would be so unwieldy. And I know that we have a Big Ten now that goes to LA. I know that we've heard Brett Yormark say that he wants the Big 12 in all 4 time zones, but that stuff is unwieldy. It's very hard. And it becomes so much like what you were describing earlier, like this AFC, NFC. You're organizing, scheduling, and kind of aligning things a certain way, but you're not a conference. It's not the same way.
Right. It would essentially be 2 leagues that shared. Yeah, it would be 2 leagues that shared a TV
scheduling.
Network. Yeah,
I get scared thinking about it
for football. Yeah, I mean,
it scares me. I don't like it. I just am I getting old where I just don't want it to change too much?
A little bit, but no, I mean that's
it's
not
like
uncomfortable
an age
thing.
No, I just but I have change.
Well, I see what you're saying, Ari, and like this is where I feel it. Like I don't want the Pac-12 to go away. I think it's better for college sports to have the Pac-12.
I just there needs to be West Coast. There needs to be a West Coast wing of the sport. And this, what I worry about is if
a relevant West Coast wing of the sport.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And what I worry about is if another league were to just cherry pick and take what it wants from and then lets the other ones sort of fall by the wayside, you don't really have a West Coast wing. You have a little bit on the West Coast with USC and UCLA, and then whoever would be in, let's say if the Big 12 were to take a couple and the rest fall. Like, that's not really a West Coast wing. And you take a part of the country that already doesn't seem particularly interested in the sport and probably make it less interested.
Because I also am like, when it comes to the USC, UCLA move to the Big Ten, it's like, I do look forward to seeing USC and Michigan play, like the new matchups. But like overall, I can't stand it. Like I think it stinks.
It
just like as a
viewership
experience, like I loved that there were pillars on the West Coast that were like, I love that USC made the West Coast relevant this year. I love that Oregon and USC were battling to own a conference the same way that the ACC teams are trying to battle Clemson to take it over again. There is a certain conferences in general are all about geographical pride too. That's the reason why they yell SEC at all the games, because it's a Southern pride thing. It just means more matters to everybody in that conference. But when you strip the geography away from it because of television revenue, you're poking the thing that we all love so much.
But is the problem that it doesn't mean more to them? Is that the basic problem?
No, but he's
to the Pac-12.
You mean?
Yeah.
But his point is the one that I also feel, which is like there are regional ties that bind. And so for the SEC, they care that the league itself is a strength, right? And that everyone believes that, like, if one of your rivals beats somebody in another league, that is a reflection on you.
They want to believe
just,
that
like,
their family is better than this other family.
And like, honestly, the entire premise of sports is based on geography. Like, you root for your favorite team because of the city in front of it.
Because you can sports, see them. Yeah, and part of the reason that, like, there are lots of sports writers who are Atlanta Braves fans, right, is because, like, they could see it. They got it on TV. It was on TBS. So but now that you can watch everything, or you can get League Pass and follow all these teams, like, you can root for teams that are not in your region, but there's, like, a uniqueness to each conference. That's why, like, when you're describing the weirdness that's going to be USC and UCLA in the Big Ten, it's going to feel weird because it's been traditionally a Midwestern conference. It has been jarring and weird for people to have Rutgers and Maryland and the East Coast as part of that footprint. Like, there are these regional traditions and feels, and it just, like, it creates a balance.
We need Vanini, because you know what this is describing? Pro wrestling.
I thought
pro wrestling went from regional promotions to they all got gobbled up by the elder Vince McMahon, who then passed it on to the younger Vince McMahon, and the WWF, which became the WWE.
Why do you know that?
I read, Ari.
I read.
I read books and I read magazine articles, and
we need to save that as a drop so that every time Ari, gets, like, a basic fact wrong or geography wrong or can't do math,
it'd be the whole
we just
show,
have Andy pop in and just be like, I read. Every time we do
I read too. I don't read about wrestling.
What do you read about, Ari? Wait, I need to know. What are you reading?
I read a lot about investing. That's good, right?
I recommended a book to Ari that he really liked, the one about the Silk Road, right?
I read the Silk Road that Andy recommended.
I also recently recommended $1 Billion Whale, which is about Joe Low, the Malaysian guy who essentially robbed his government created a fund that he essentially robbed for billions of dollars to become like an international playboy. It's a great story.
You should read.
I read Under the Banner of Heaven. Have you read that book?
I haven't read that.
But you should read The Club, which is one that Andy and I read because Greg Sankey recommended it. And we have someone in the comments pointing this out too. Like, European soccer is also a very apt comparison for, like, understanding.
I've heard that people read The Club in order to try to understand what could happen in college football.
It is the most helpful thing I've read.
Are you rolling your eyes at us? He just rolled his eyes at us.
Me? No, also, I didn't roll.
Nicole,
I saw an eye roll.
I don't like reading about things that don't interest me.
The authors of The Club sent me their Messi versus Ronaldo book, by the way. And I'm bringing that on spring break with me. Yeah, I'm excited.
How come we were co-authors of that article and you get the freebie? Unbelievable.
I can mail it to you.
That's the cool thing about books. More than one person can read the same one.
Okay, Ari.
I mean, that's cool.
Mr. Book, Mr. Reading over here.
Yeah,
I'm not Mr. Reading, but, like, I do read. But, like, Ari, I like listening to murder podcasts.
I'm telling you, $1 Billion Whale. You need to read that or get the audiobook version of it. Does
listening to an audiobook count as reading, by the way?
Yes.
If you listen to an audiobook, can you say I read that book?
You shouldn't, but
I had this argument. I counted it on my Goodreads. I listened to the Matthew McConaughey audiobook of his memoir.
Well, you have to hear him say it. Yes.
Yeah. But I did put that on my Goodreads and counted it as a book last year. So I think yes. I think they count as books.
All right, good. Well, you need to listen about Joe Low then. $1 Billion Whale. I'm telling you, it's great.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it today.
All right. So our next question comes from Grant, and it's Grant wanted to do a crossover college basketball, college football question, but it actually ties back to the beginning of the season. But it's a very interesting question. So college basketball runs plenty of early season tournaments to buff up non-conference play. One of them is the Champions Classic, attended annually by Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, and Michigan State. He didn't say this, but I'll say this. This is the one that always has between the two games a college football playoff release, a rankings release. And Grant says, I love the game format, likely because my alma mater, Michigan State, is included, and at least a spicy top 10 early season matchups fairly regularly. Given that we're now in March, I would like to pay homage to college basketball in this mailbag. If you were in charge of setting up a Champions Classic for college football, who would be the 4 programs that you'd invite for the next 5 to 10 years? Inclusion of a program from the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12, like the Basketball Champions Classic does, seems like a great strategy for national attention, but maybe the Pac-12 wants to play too. Debate in the comments always. This is a great question, and I would love to see this, where you just have like the same 4 superpowers, but you mix up who plays who in a non-conference game every year. I wouldn't do it in the same place. I would do home and homes, but I love this idea. Now, the requiring various conferences, no. It's basically the people who put together the 4-team CFP designed the one they would want the most. So Notre Dame would have to be in it.
Well, Alabama, obviously, right?
Yep. Ohio State.
Georgia.
Ohio State, and then
you can only pick one from the SEC, or can I
mean,
just
I feel
scrap
like
that and just pick one?
I think you would want some regional balance, right? Like these are games. Like I think it has to be like Oregon, right? Or USC.
Yeah. I think either one would work.
Although you're leaving a Texas or an Oklahoma out. Like part of the reason the Champions Classic works is like these are 4 blue bloods and have won a million games and iconic coaches. So maybe that stuff needs to factor in as well. That's why like Alabama makes total sense. But some of the other stuff you're going brand or coaching, like relatively new coach versus everything else as well. That's a tough one, actually, if you can only pick 4.
I mean, in college basketball, the difference is you have like coaches versus cancer. You have the battle for Atlantis. You have other post or preseason tournaments that draw really good brand name schools as well. So in that universe, there would be more of those.
So we just got a comment from Kevin who said, would the teams accept something like this? I'd be worried they decline to keep themselves away from a loss. This is something I'm going to be like screaming from the rooftops over the next couple of years. And it's one of the reasons that I think Nick Saban has been wrong in his talking points about the SEC schedule and all of these other pieces. You can have losses. Like we're going into a world where you do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be unbeaten. People can challenge themselves. You can play a harder schedule. Okay, sorry, Ari.
I'm sorry, Ari.
You can lose. Everybody gets in.
I'm sorry,
Everybody
Ari.
has fun. Everybody gets in.
A team can't get lucky and have a weak draw and get to the national title game. You're actually going to have to be
getting
good
lucky
to
in
get
the
there.
national championship game.
No,
and
but you
it.
can play. You can.
No, I said get to the national championship game.
You can play these games.
Name one team that's
and
played
not
for
be
a national
penalized.
championship that's been lucky.
TCU. Several months ago.
They got lucky. They did, yeah. But you weren't allowed to say that before the game.
It just happened.
Let's go
It's
back.
It's the only time.
2 months. 2 months.
It's the only.
Oh,
well, they didn't get lucky because of their regular season schedule. They got lucky because of the seeding in the tournament.
Ari, would 2012 Notre Dame have played for the national title in a 12-team playoff?
No.
Okay.
It's
not the only one that ever
for
made
a very long time. This sport has been organized in a way.
Pre-playoff era, yeah.
But
now in the playoff era,
we have to unwire this because for so long, going undefeated was the way to succeed at the highest level.
And nobody did it then.
Well, people went undefeated.
No, I know. It was like 1 or 2 or 3 at most teams.
LSU and Clemson went undefeated back to Clemson went undefeated in 18 and LSU went undefeated.
No, I know, but I'm
19.
saying it's not like we have a
Alabama went undefeated in 20
that go undefeated every year. And it's like I think it's a lot easier too. You're going to see a lot of examples in the comments based on who got to the national championship game. Luckily, if it was still the BCS era, I'm all on board on that. But getting to the playoff, I don't think anybody's outscheduled their way because they were afraid to get in the playoff. Especially considering the facts that teams that usually win the national title in this era have a loss already. Many times,
I know, but that has
probably come in the non-conference game.
We have not seen, like, there will be a shift, especially if the SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule. We will all be more used to teams that have challenged themselves and maybe not won all their games, or maybe they have more than one loss. This will change. And so I know you're going to hate it.
Done a decade in advance?
Some of it.
Well,
but that's what we're saying. If we invent, that's why we would invent this new Champions Classic. But I do think people might play because people do like to have marquee games, at least one on their schedule in the non-conference. We would also not be penalizing these teams if they lose them. They would still get some credit for going and scheduling this. This is like how basketball works in the net. It takes into consideration how good the team is, but also where the game is. and you get more credit for scheduling more challenging.
Nobody watches the shit.
Because it's
Nobody
basketball.
Nobody
Ari,
watches the preseason NFL either because it doesn't matter. No one cares.
Ari, that's
I don't want to watch a
preseason
stakeless
NFL.
game.
This is not a preseason game. This is a game. Everybody watches the NFL in week 1. Does a team that loses in the NFL, are they done? Can they not win the Super Bowl? Do people stop watching? Do people not watch the? Do people not watch?
We're going to have the SEC and the Big Ten, the
18?
AFC and the NFC. We're going to have losses. We're making it into the NFL, and that's fine if that's what you want.
The NFL is the most popular sport in the country.
I know when we get it on Sundays.
That is what they want.
But yeah. I mean, I'm on the I don't want it to be like the NFL train.
Oh no, 2T4 killing you at this one.
Is that true?
Yes.
I mean, I watched preseason. Yeah,
but it was people like you, Ari. That's who watches preseason.
I was betting on spring training yesterday, so I understand. But yeah, I mean, I know. But like the thing too is like there's been a lot of teams that have benefited from weaker conferences. So like Clemson, I think, has probably benefited and gone undefeated by playing in the ACC. I think there's been a lot of Oklahoma teams that had really bad defenses that have ascended to the playoff. But we're not talking about poor conference play. We're talking about teams ducking other teams. I
don't think anybody's going to duck anybody anymore.
Is anybody ducking them now?
Yeah.
Like there's certain teams that don't want to play on the road, I guess.
But
Michigan
just
ducks?
UCLA. Michigan ducked UCLA.
I know, but wasn't there a scheduling conflict because of that? Like, wasn't that a Big Ten? They're coming to the Big Ten reason or something? It wasn't because they didn't want to lose.
That's Ohio State. That's the Ohio State Washington cancellation. That one was.
So Michigan canceled the UCLA series because they were afraid of losing.
No, but Ari, it's stuff like scheduling FCS opponents. You're doing certain things on your schedule that are going to be wins. At least we're not having this argument on a picks pod in season, guys. I'm just proud of us.
I just wonder, are you
it's
upset
just an inability to
less FCS?
It's an inability to recognize my point that drives me crazy.
Oh, we recognize your point.
I recognize your point.
It's just stupid. Yeah, I know. I'm stupid.
You don't understand the concept of a net gain. Yeah. We get your point.
Michigan's playing Tech. Yeah, I mean, we get there's awesome non-conference games right now, and they matter more. That's good.
They don't matter any differently. You will watch them the same way with a 12-team playoff that you watch them in the 14 playoff.
And our point is that maybe people will schedule more of them.
Yeah, you're talking about the basketball ones. They don't watch them because they're basketball. You're going to watch Alabama and Ohio State play a non-conference football game because it's Alabama and Ohio State playing a football game.
I know.
Like, that's why you're going to watch it.
I know.
All right. Let's move on to Joe's question. This is a fun one.
Is it about the playoff expansion?
Shockingly, no.
Okay.
What movie football player would have had the wildest recruitment? Could be from either a pro or college team in his respective team. So this is not necessarily one where we saw the recruitment. This could be a member of the team that Rudy joined or whatever. You could look at this in terms of a national following, a la Arch Manning, or unpredictability, a la Peyton Bowen, etc. So I got to go. Well, first of all, I think we should expand this universe. It is the Friday before Selection Sunday, after all.
Oh, you're going to do basketball too?
Jesus Shuttlesworth.
He already won then. It's over.
Jesus Shuttlesworth had the wildest recruit. No. Had the wildest recruitment we have seen on screen. He definitely beats the Anthony Michael Hall character in Johnny Be Good as the wildest athlete recruitment we've seen in the movies.
We did not see any of the Space Jam characters get recruited.
That's true.
That might be weirder.
Well, no. Here's what I was thinking. Latimer from the program. Imagine his recruitment. Imagine Alvin Mack's recruitment.
Guys, you're missing the whole thing.
Okay.
I was going to say Bobby Boucher.
Oh, yeah. Elias Gray.
Because of the mom. Yeah.
Imagine Nick Saban visiting Bobby Boucher's mom. Foosball.
You guys imagine. Imagine the recruitment of Billy Bob from Varsity Blues.
Oh, yes.
That's a good one.
I give it a 10. A 10. I give it a 10.
Oh, rest in peace, Billy Bob, by the way.
Yeah. Billy Bob. Soon. Or who was the main quarterback?
Well,
Tweeter
would have gotten arrested. Tweeter was the slot receiver in Varsity Blues.
Yeah, Tweeter.
He played.
He's
by
the one that would
StatCon.
smash beer bottles on his truck and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
He would have gotten arrested on his official visit. For
Okay,
sure.
which reminds me, like Tim Riggins
Tweeter.
Yes.
also.
Oh.
Yeah, but he would have just gone to
be
Texas,
arrested.
though.
Yeah,
No,
but
he
wait,
wouldn't
you
have gone to
can't-
Texas.
Where would he have
You
gone? He
think
wouldn't
he
leave
would
the
have gotten
Texas
state.
into?
Tech.
Oh yeah.
Why? Because
Yeah.
he's like
He didn't
he's
get-
not a star, but he's just like a gritty player.
Yeah. But he would own Lubbock.
Yes,
He would definitely own Lubbock.
Where was the Tim Riggins where is it located, like roughly in Texas? Was it supposed to be Midland or Austin or what?
It's supposed to be
Odessa.
Odessa. Yeah,
Odessa.
because it's that's where Permian is. But it was
But
all
the show
filmed
was
in
not-
Austin.
But the
Yeah.
show was the show supposed to also be in the Midland?
Dylan. Yeah,
but
I
was
think
Dillon,
so.
Texas,
I mean, they
like
made it
supposed to
up.
be Midland?
Yeah, Dillon was supposed to be
Odessa?
like a West Texas town, but they filmed it in Pflugerville. So if you know your Texas geography, it didn't look right. Pflugerville is an Austin suburb.
I'm actually writing about the quarterback who committed to Purdue, and he goes to Midland Legacy, which is Midland League, which is the opponent of Permian.
Yes.
I've got another one. Rod
Okay.
Tidwell.
Whoa! Yes.
Rod Tidwell in an NIL era. Show me the money. His college visits.
Oh my God, that would have been amazing. Yes. See, this is the thing. You have to go through every sports movie and figure out those characters. Like Rick Wild Thing Vaughn getting recruited for baseball.
I mean, what about Willie Beeman?
Oh, Willie Beeman's definitely taken all 5 official visits. He's not signing till February. Like there's going to be high drama.
You know who would have a really crazy recruitment would be Paul Crewe.
Oh yeah,
He went to prison. Could you imagine?
Eventually, yeah. But wasn't Paul Crewe a former college player who went to? I can't remember.
I don't remember
Longest
the
yard
original one. The original one, but he got a DUI in the
That's
remake.
what it was. That's what it was.
I would watch spin-offs of like every Remember the Titans character.
Yeah. Like Donald Faison's probably getting recruited, but they have questions about like, why did it take you so long to beat this guy out? He's clearly not any good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
So man, this is great. Now, the whole Varsity Blues thing, like this reminds me of on Twitter when Chris Ricks reached out to remind all of us that Lance Harbor losing his scholarship allowed Chris Ricks to sign with Florida State. Like if you look at the timing of it, it's exactly what happened. Like Lance Harbor loses his scholarship, they got an opening and they signed Chris Ricks.
Do you guys have seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High or no?
Of course.
The linebacker
for
Jefferson was his name.
Jefferson, that's right.
Can you imagine how he'd be a 5-star linebacker?
Well, he already had the Trans Am.
Yeah, he did. So they already showed in the movie that he had been improperly recruited.
Oh yeah, I think he was improperly recruited to go to Ridgemont High, right?
Yeah, he had the Trans Am. That's funny.
Yeah, he would have had a lot of demands, and I think probably his official visit would have been pretty nuts. But no, the Tweeter official visit. Did Tweeter and Billy Bob like that? That's who in Varsity Blues decides they're a package deal. Is that that's Tweeter and Billy Bob, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta give my boy an offer
a
too.
package deal would definitely help for the story purposes.
I've always wanted to sit on the bed of a truck in West Texas and drink beer and then throw the beer bottle up into the air and shoot it with a shotgun.
Ari, I cannot
Like that'd be
picture
like
you doing.
You're an
any
8-hour
of that.
drive away from that happening in real life, Ari. All you just get in the.
I wanted to
Get an
pitch
I-20
going to
get an
Midland for
I-20
the
and-
story, but
and
I don't know
head
if it would have
west.
been worth the expense. But there's one other one that we haven't mentioned that I think we have to mention.
Okay,
Forrest Gump would have had a really weird recruitment.
that's true.
I like that one. That one would be extremely unpredictable.
Are we to believe that Forrest Gump was a walk-on? That's what.
There's no way he's a scholarship guy.
I mean, we knew he could run.
Yeah, specialist.
I don't
Yeah.
know if Bear Bryant would have given him a scholarship though.
What about the Auburn?
There was no
the
scholarship
Auburn,
limits
Alabama?
back then.
Well, no, exactly. They probably put Forrest on a swim scholarship or something. But what did Auburn do? Did they offer anything? Did they even try?
It didn't seem like Auburn was in the mix there.
I find that very difficult to believe. Auburn had to have tried.
How we'll never know.
Well, we know he's not.
We'll never know.
I mean, we know he's not a walk-on.
Man, that was a great question. I read it and I liked it, but I didn't think I quite fully appreciated it yet. But yeah, the Joe Kane from Necessary Roughness, or I'm sorry, from the program, the Necessary Roughness. I want to know about Andre Krim's recruitment, like the Sinbad character who winds up being a professor. Like, is he trying to get away from the bars so that he can see what the chem lab looks like?
You know, there's one other one too.
Okay.
He hadn't grown up yet, but I bet he turned into a great player. What about Rashid Hot Hands Hannon? He's the
Yes.
the kid from Little Giants.
Yes. He had some.
What about the ice box?
The ice box.
Yeah, it's Spike's recruitment.
Yeah, there's some
Carrying
good
a
ones.
refrigerator around. Yeah, basically any character from Little Giants. I like that.
I do think Vaughn, look what Forrest Mom did just to get him into grade school. Oh Lord. I think that dovetails with a real SEC recruiting story. Good Lord.
Yeah.
All right.
What about Air Bud, the football edition?
Yeah,
That's
Airbud, the
golden
Someone
receiver.
would 100%. Lane Kiffin would offer Air Bud.
Well, Lane Kiffin's got a dog on scholarship right now, apparently. So.
I know.
Juice Kiffin.
He would be recruiting Air Bud. 100%.
We should do a ranking of at one point. Oh, Andy, I had an idea for a random ranking, and Nicole, maybe you'll come back next week and do it with us. But
all right,
random ranking of things that you can do as an adult that would piss your parents off when you were a kid.
Oh,
kind
I
of.
like that.
You know what made me think about that? And I was driving the other day, and it was like 71 degrees outside, and I blast my air conditioning. Full blast with the windows down and the sunroof open. Like, I know if I was 12, that wasn't happening. And I was like, this would be a good random ranking of things that you can do now that never would have flown back in the day.
I am totally in. Now,
but another random ranking of best fictional coaches. Like, who do you think was the best coach?
A combination of Jonathan Moxon and Lance Harbor post mutiny. That is the best fictional football coach.
Post mutiny.
They invented the spread offense. I tweeted that, by the way, and somebody got really mad at me in the replies, like, how could you say that? Texas high schools were already running spread offenses when that movie came out. I'm like,
can you relax, dude?
Chill.
I just want somebody to spike the clock by throwing a football at the side of a ref's face.
This is beautiful. Or knock the mascot off of his horse with a pass.
Yeah, with a pass.
Yeah. Listen, we've got a lot to talk about. We actually need to figure out also, it's the off season. We've done all the football movies. We're going to have to figure out what we can do as rewatchables. We also need to figure out games we want to do rewatchables on, because everybody loved that last year. We picked some really cool games. We still haven't done the Kick Six. One that I've gotten requests for, and I think, Ari, you and I were both at this game. Nicole, I don't know if I think you were covering college basketball at the time. The Ohio State-Wisconsin game in 2010. J.J. Watt, Terrell Pryor. That was a really good one. But if anybody's got suggestions for those games that we can do during the offseason, it's so much fun to go back and rewatch those. Those episodes were awesome last year. That was some of the most fun I had on this show. So we need to start thinking about those. And you, the listeners, also think about them. Hit us up. Let us know what you want. And in movies, we also, I mean, do we veer off out of the football, because we've done the football movies? Do we veer off into other classic sports movies? Okay. Yes.
I'm in for all of those. I love sports movies.
Beautiful.
There hasn't been a good football movie in a while. I think we need another one.
It's so I actually have learned why. The reason why. So Mark Ellis is the guy who coordinates the sports scenes in sports movies. He's a former Appalachian State quarterback. His brother is Todd Ellis, who was a South Carolina quarterback. He's the voice of the Gamecocks now. So Mark explained, when I was talking to him a little while ago about Varsity Blues, because he worked on that one, he said that there's no international market for American football movies because obviously they don't care about American football. So you have these really expensive movies to make because you have to get all these special ability extras. You have to have uniforms. You have to film all these very difficult scenes to film of game action. And then you can't sell it to other countries. So
there was one of
hey, throw in a comic book movie instead. Bam! And then everybody can watch it. Yeah.
They sell billions of dollars internationally. But there was a football movie recently that they filmed at the Clemson game. I was covering it with Grace, and we watched them go run out, film something during halftime, and then run off the field.
I watched that movie. It was good. It was the player who had to adopted his brother and raised him.
Safety? Was that the name?
Safety, yes.
Safety.
It's a very
at Ohio Stadium too.
I remember when that story.
I think that's how they have to film those types of movies. But there's a lot of great baseball movies. I love Miracle. I'll be with you guys for these.
If they made Major League right now, would people not watch it?
Oh my God, I would watch it. I'll just go watch the original 100 more times. That might be my favorite sports movie of all time. It really might be.
I loved Rookie of the Year so much, and the idea that like you could just be injured into becoming a major league pitcher so much. I love that.
I watched that in the theater. I watched Rookie of the Year and Angels in the Outfield in the theater.
Angels in the Outfield.
Little Big League also doesn't get a lot of credit, but it deserves
Little Big League's outstanding.
Incredible movie.
Did you guys do Little Giants?
We didn't. We need to.
Can we do that at least? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I would like to be on for that.
Listen, Rick Moranis and Ed O'Neill. Come on.
Becky Icebox was like my dream. She was my idol growing up.
That movie is the reason why a lot of people when I grew up with became Cowboys fans. Those uniforms in that movie, the Thanksgiving ones with the stars on the shoulder. Oh my God, those were clean. Sweet. Yeah.
You know, we might be able. Devin Sawa follows me on Twitter. We might be able to get him to join us and discuss.
What?
Junior Floyd follows me on Twitter.
This beats the hell out of Melissa Joan Hart following me on Twitter.
She follows everybody.
Is that your bet?
Oh, boo.
Hey, don't take this away from him. You know who follows me on Twitter is Richard Lewis.
That's right.
Enthusiasm, because he's a big Ohio State guy.
And Anything But Love with Jamie Lee Curtis.
And I tried to get him on 4 to 6 with A&B with Landis, and he agreed to it. But then he told me he was like his character in the show Curb Your Enthusiasm is like who he is as a person.
I think we should try to get Junior Floyd on. He can talk about throwing 100%. those toilet paper roll touchdowns. We can ask him a lot of questions. I think
that's Junior Floyd a very attractive man now.
I'm sure he is.
He's still in a bunch of stuff. He was in Hacks last season of Hacks.
That was a great show. A great show. I know that it's coming back. But yeah, we've had Alvin Mack on the show, Dwayne Davis, because his son Wyatt was an offensive lineman at Ohio State. So
let's do it. These are good off-season goals for us.
This guy who played Junior Floyd was the quintessential part down the middle, blonde 90s heartthrob that you could possibly imagine.
He was also Casper the Friendly Ghost. It's like
he was
everything around that time. Yeah.
He was an Idle Hands and Final Destination too. Like he's
Ari's
a tour
becoming
of
more
the 90s.
impressed. Ari's becoming more and more impressed the more he.
How's it going to say? I'm going to go DM Rick Moranis to try to one up you, but I don't think I could.
He's been on the Magnum PI reboot. Oh boy,
guys, this will be an off-season goal. Yep, we're going to work on
it. Can somebody just get Lila Garrity to follow me? That's all I want.
That's Minka Kelly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just see what we can do. Okay.
We'll talk about like teenage years or 20s crushes that could follow me on Twitter.
That was not that long ago.
So Ari, you've seen 500 Days of Summer, I hope, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I'm glad. That makes me happy. I'm sure you enjoyed the last 5 minutes of that movie a whole lot. So
I think that's a good time to leave now.
That is. I'm going on vacation. I will see you guys in a while. Ari and Nicole have you, and they will take good care of you next week. Enjoy the first week of the NCAA tournament. I'll be on a boat enjoying it with a drink in my hand. We'll talk to you soon.